Hare Krishna, Namaste. Chapter 15 is entitled as Puruṣottama Vidya, Puruṣottama Yogam. Sloka 19, Part 15. Yo māmevam asammūdaha janāti puruṣottamam sa sarvavid bhajati mam sarvabhavena Bharata. From Brahma Sutra, we learn Prakriti-stha pratignya drishtanta anuruddhat, that the Lord is the cause, material cause for the universe. Why? Because of correlation of the proposition and the example. And that proposition and example is what we learn from Chandogya Upanishad, where the father instructs his son, Svetaketu. Yata saumyekena mritpindena sarvam mrinmayam. By knowing the ball of clay, one cognizes the byproducts of that ball of clay, the pots, the plates, the bricks, the toys. By knowing the Lord, who is the upadhana karana for the universe, one is knower of everything. And what we are going to learn now is that which is upadhana karana is one and the same. There is no second to it. Sadeva saumyam idam agra atīto ekameva advatiyam. This is also from Chandogya Upanishad in connection to the same conversation that was going on between father and son. What it means is that all these things that you see, which is full of varieties and variations, before the creation, it was all existing as one, the Brahman, the absolute truth. Now let's recollect the previous session. We saw an example of pot, that I see a ball of clay in the morning, and in the afternoon I see no more that clay, but I see different items, pots, bricks, toys, plates. Similarly, the things that we see in the world after creation has so many variations, but at the time of pralaya, destruction period, it was all one as Brahman, the Supreme Lord. And that is what has been stated in this Upanishad. Sadeva saumya idam agra atīto ekameva advitiyam. This is an ultimate statement which confirms that the Lord is upadhana karana for everything. Sadeva, as the Lord himself, idam, this world, atīto, was existing as the Lord himself, ekameva, all as one, without a second substance, advitiyam. Dvaita means two, advitiyam, advaita means one without second. There is another statement we already saw from the Upanishad, eko havai Narayana atīto. It was just Lord Narayana who existed, nothing else. There is no second existence to the Lord, which means the upadhana karana cannot be something else. It is the Lord himself. By stating ekameva, it is established that he is upadhana karana. The thing that we see now as varieties like clay pot, clay plate, etc., with different names and different forms, but before they came into this form, they were all under the same single name as ball of clay, with the same form of ball of clay. Only then it is called as upadhana karana, not otherwise. When it was a single ball of clay, we were not able to say which part of it is a pot, which part of it is a plate, which part of it is a brick. that cannot be identified or differentiated. They were all one and the same. Likewise, before creation, there will be no differentiation as we see now. This earth, fire, water, air, ether, human, devata, pashu, pakshi, stavara. We cannot say which one is chetanas and which one is achetanas. That is, which is sentient being, which is non-sentient being. Before creation, we will have no different names, no different forms. They are all as one in the Lord. At the time of creation, that is, by the sankalpa of the Lord, who is a nimitta karana, these entities which are chetanas and achetana, which was in the Lord, takes different forms, different names. The Lord has various energies which are known as Shaktis. Although there is no difference between the energy and the energetic is accepted as the supreme, and energy is accepted as subordinate. Therefore, both chetanas and achetana, the matter and spirit, are always subordinate to the Supreme Lord, as in the case of the master and the servant, or the teacher and the student. So from this Upanishad statement, Sadeva Saumya Idam Agra Asit Ekameva Advitiyam, we understand that it is the Lord who is Upadhana Karana. One may ask a question, what does it mean by Advitiyam? Why it has to explicitly mention that without a second? Let's be clear before we get into the detail of this. Advitiyam doesn't mean that it is only the Lord who is absolute and exists. Everything else is false. Everything else is illusion. That is not the interpretation of Advitiyam. Let's understand this with an example. A great poet, he comes to the kingdom and he glorifies the king, saying that there is no second to you. And the king, who is very pleased, honors him with a lot of gifts and sends him off. But then his wife, the queen, becomes very upset. His children becomes very upset. The ministers were upset. How can the poet say that the king doesn't have a second, while he has the queen, he has children, he has ministers, he has a citizen, he has everything that he needs? Then why does the poet say king doesn't have a second? And on top of it, the king also honored him for saying so. When they approached the king and explained how what this poet said is not correct, then the king became very angry and asked the ministers to get the poet back so he can punish him or ask him the reason for why he said so. They brought the poet back, and the poet was questioned by the king, "How can you say I don't have a second, because I have everything?" And the poet smilingly said that, "I still say you don't have a second, my dear king, because of this reason. You have a beautiful queen, wonderful children, great ministers, loving citizens, lot of wealth. You have great name, fame, and prestige. With all this, there is no second person in the world who can compete with you. Therefore, I still hold to my statement that you, my dear king, with all these opulences, you don't have a second." And the king became very happy, and he loaded the scholar with more gifts. Then the wives, children, ministers, they were also pleased by the response and did agree that the king doesn't have a second. So Advitiyam doesn't mean there is nothing exists other than the Lord. It means there is nothing exists outside of the Lord. There is nothing exists equal to the Lord. There is nothing exists with similar opulences of the Lord. The Lord has the spiritual world and the material world, that is the Nitya Vibhuti and Leela Vibhuti as his opulence. The Lord has Chetanas as his opulence, and we cannot find a second Brahman, second person who has similar opulences of the Lord. Therefore, he is Bhagavan and he is Advitiyam, one who has no second. Now, what is the purpose of mentioning Advitiyam in this Upanishad? Let's understand that. By knowing the mud, one knows everything that comes out of mud. This we understand clearly, but the problem is, by knowing the mud, it is not that we know the potter. By knowing mud, I know its byproduct, the clay plate, clay pot, etc. But that doesn't mean that I know the pot maker, the potter, right? Because he is not made of ball of mud. If he was, then we can say that we also know the potter, because he is the same byproduct of ball of mud. But we know for sure that is not the fact. Mud is different and the potter is different. So by knowing the mud, we will certainly not know the potter. By knowing the potter, we will not know the mud, as they are separate entity. But here we learned that the Lord's energy transforms into this universe. Like the mud transforms into the pot, therefore the mud is Upadhana Karana. The Lord transforms into the universe, therefore the Lord is Upadhana Karana. But the question is there someone else who is Nimitta Karana, like the potter who makes the Lord transform into this universe? Because mud is Upadhana Karana and potter is Nimitta Karana. The potter who is Nimitta Karana uses the Upadhana Karana to make the pot. Maybe there is someone else who is Nimitta Karana, like the potter, uses the Lord who is Upadhana Karana to make this world. That is the question. And just to reject such ideas, the Upanishad says Advitiyam, that there is no second person who is Nimitta Karana to do this work. It is the Lord alone who is Nimitta Karana as well as Upadhana Karana. This is unique. We will not see in the world like this, because Nimitta Karana and Upadhana Karana are always separate. But over here, from the Upanishad, from the Brahma Sutra, we learn both the Nimitta Karana and Upadhana Karana is one and the same. That is the Lord who is the cause of creation of this universe and who is also material cause of creation of this universe. And we can find a similar confirmation in Chandogya Upanishad, which says Tad aikshata bahuksham prajayeya iti, that the Lord himself becomes this world through his Shakti. That is the Brahman, the Lord's energy that transforms to give rise to cosmic creation. His personal energy expands from him to transform into the universe. So this is the second evidence to prove that there is no second person. It is the same Lord who is Upadhana Karana, material cause as well. And he makes the sankalpa that let him become many. He decides to create this universe, Tadaikshata, which confirms he is Nimitta Karana, the instrumental cause. Like the potter decides to make the pot out of his sankalpa. But there is a huge difference between the potter making the pot and the Lord creating the universe. The difference is the potter decides, I am going to create pot from this ball of mud. The Lord also says, I am going to create the universe. But the difference here is that the potter never makes sankalpa that let me create the pot, let me become the pot. Because potter is only nimitta karana. He can never become upadhana karana, the material cause. Whereas the Lord says, let me create this universe. Let me become the universe. Let me become many. Bahusham prajayeya iti, which clearly says is not only nimitta karana, is upadhana karana as well. That which becomes many is only possible by the upadhana karana. Like the ball of mud can become many. Clay pot, clay plate, clay bricks, etc. And that which makes decision to create can only be a nimitta karana. In this case, the Lord, unlike the potter who is only nimitta karana, the Lord is both nimitta karana and upadhana karana. Let me become many. Let me become this universe. Besides this, the third cause is sahakari karana. Sahakari karana means additional tools to help to make the creation. The wheel and stick are the sahakari karana to make the pot out of ball of mud by the nimitta karana, by the potter. Over here, what are the additional tools? Who are the additional people, entity that the Lord makes use of to create this universe? Say if I have to make chapatis, bread, I probably do it by myself. It's quite simple. If I have to make a house, then I certainly need additional tools, additional men to give me hands. Then what to speak about creating the universe? So, does the Lord take help from someone else as an additional supporting cause to make this universe? The Upanishad answers, Tadatmanam swayam akuruta. The Brahman, the absolute truth, the Supreme Lord, creates the world by himself. The Brahman itself creates it, or the Brahman creates its own, which means the Sahakari Karana is also the Lord. Nimitta Karana, Upadhana Karana and Sahakari Karana, it's all one and the same for the creation. It is the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna himself. And for this reason, Vedavyasa in his Brahma Sutra says, Prakritischa pratignya drishtanta anurodhat. The Lord is also the material cause, as it is stated in the Upanishads. Now that we learned that the Lord is nimitta karana, the instrumental cause, also material cause, the upadhana karana, and also sahakari karana, the additional supportive cause, the big question comes, how can the Lord be upadhana karana? Because upadhana karana means transformation, transforming from one thing to another thing. But the Vedas and even in Bhagavad Gita we have learned the Lord is avikaraya, never goes through any changes. If that is the case, then how can he be the upadhana karana? This will be our subject for our next session. What we learned in today's session is the Lord, whose nimitta karana doesn't have a second. Sadeva saumya ida agra asit ekameva advitiyam. Namaste Hare Krishna.